This week's episode of the Rural Woman Podcast is brought to you by the patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast. This amazing group of individuals contribute financially to the Rural Woman Podcast to ensure the stories of women in agriculture hit your earbuds each and every week. Want to join them in supporting the stories of women in agriculture while getting access to extended episodes, patron-only episodes, and other great perks? Head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more about how you can become a patron through Patreon. Hi, I'm Caitlin Dubin, and this is the Rural Woman Podcast. I'm a first-generation farmer who married into agriculture. Born and raised in a city, I was so unfamiliar with where my food came from, but I was determined to figure it out. Through my journey into agriculture, I saw women who were strong but humble, often taking a back seat. To me, these women were leaders who deserved a seat at the table. I created the Rural Woman Podcast to share the voices of women in an industry whose stories often went untold. The rural entrepreneurs who live and breathe their work, full of grit and pride. We come here to share our stories, to be in community with each other, to be challenged and inspired, but most importantly, to be celebrated and to be heard. We may not all live, farm, ranch, or homestead the same, but we are all connected. We are rural women, and our stories are worthy of being told. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Rural Woman Podcast. Today you'll meet Erika Stewart, a rancher, educator, advocate, and a proud Saskatchewanite. Alongside her husband Cyle and their 3 daughters, Erika operates Pine Ranch in Morse, Saskatchewan, where they raise commercial cow-calf pairs and grass yearlings with a strong focus on soil health, low-stress cattle handling, and continuous improvement. Originally from Merritt, British Columbia, Erika shares the powerful story behind their decision to relocate their entire ranching operation to the prairies. A move driven by necessity, reshaped by resilience, and rooted in deep commitment to land and livestock. Named Saskatchewan's Outstanding Young Farmers, Erika and Cyle are not only raising cattle, but also raising the bar on sustainable ranching practices. Erika serves as the provincial coordinator for the Verified Beef Production Plus program and brings her passion for education and advocacy in every facet of her work, from boardrooms to the classrooms and beyond. In this episode, you'll hear how Erika's journey has been shaped by drought, determination, and drive to build stronger community connections. Whether it's through grazing management or mentoring the next generation, Erika is a powerful voice in the Canadian agriculture scene and a proud example of what it means to be a rural woman today. Without further ado, my friends, let's get to this week's episode with Erika. Erika, welcome to the Rural Woman Podcast. How are you today?
I'm really well. Thanks, Caitlin. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I feel like I'm just talking to my girlfriend over a cup of coffee, and I'm excited to share your story and for me to get to know more about you and to share some big moves you've made in agriculture.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you as well.
Erika, for the folks who are unfamiliar with you, give us your background, tell us who you are and where you're from and how you're connected to agriculture.
Yeah, so my name's Erika Stewart. I'm a rancher. My family and I ranch in Morse, Saskatchewan, so kind of the southwest-ish part of the province. And yeah, I grew up on my family's ranch, and I've always been involved in agriculture.
Born and raised a rancher.
Yes, yeah.
But not in Saskatchewan. So where were you born and raised?
That's right. So I was actually born and raised on my family's ranch in Merritt, BC, so the southern interior of BC, kind of considered the semi-desert. We had, lots of mountains and trees, obviously. It was beautiful BC, and we had crown rangeland that the cows would spend the summer on. So vastly different from Morse, Saskatchewan.
Right. Absolutely. Tell us about your family's operation. How long had you been ranching in Merritt, BC for?
Yeah, so my dad grew up on that ranch. So they bought that place in 1962. So yeah, he grew up there. My brother and I grew up there. And then we made the really hard decision. Like, it was not, was not made lightly. I loved that place. And I honestly always thought I'd be there and, raise my family there. But there was just things that were too difficult in that area that we just thought. My husband and I were quite young when we knew this is what we wanted to do with our life, and we didn't want to fight some of the different policies and things that were just happening around us. So we looked to Saskatchewan to find land and move our entire operation. So in 2017, our ranch in BC sold, and we found some land in Saskatchewan, so here in Morse, and moved the whole ranching operation, so the cows and everything, to Morse.
So tell us, how does one move a ranching operation 2 provinces over?
It was, now reflecting on it, it was kind of crazy. And I don't think I could do it again. But it took a lot of pre-planning, I guess, is the best word I can come up with. So we moved 8 liner loads of cattle, like cows and calves. That was a bit tricky because in BC we calved in February, just so the calves were, big and strong enough to make it out onto our summer range, like the pretty adverse conditions, the mountains and that. We had to be out of our BC place in April, so we had to move young calves. So that was a lot of consultation with our vet and nutritionist on the best way to do that. And like I said, everything was just super precise. So we got possession of our Saskatchewan place on April 2nd. So my husband moved, he left then and to receive cattle, and Dad and I and our oldest daughter stayed behind to load trucks and send trucks and equipment his way. So we would go into a field and pull out 40 pair 3 days before the liner would come, the next liner would come, and we'd actually change their ration. So we'd give them more straw just to, keep the rumen full for the 14-hour ride to Saskatchewan. And then the day the truck would come, we'd wake up at 3, make sure all of the pairs were up and had nursed, and then make sure we got pairs on the truck. That was the most nerve-wracking thing, I guess, right? When we go into a field and pull out pairs, you have to make sure you have exactly the right pairs, and loading them too. We wouldn't get necessarily 40 pairs on a truck, but we'd pull 40 just to make sure, if something looked a little bit sick or off, we had some wiggle room. So again, just making sure we absolutely had the right pairs on the truck. It was a lot, but we did it.
Yeah, no doubt. It's always the thought, right? When we think about agriculture, when we think about ranching, it's just like, if you wanted to move somewhere else, well, you can't really move the farm, but literally you'd move the ranch. Tell us about what the process was like for you and your husband to find a new property that was going to suit what you wanted, or really what you think you wanted, because like you said, the conditions are completely different in Merritt, BC versus Saskatchewan as a whole.
Yes, absolutely. So trying to find land was actually probably the most enjoyable part of the whole deal. We looked a lot. So we traveled around Saskatchewan a lot. And I always joke that if I ever make it to Texas, that's kind of on my bucket list, I'm going to go to like a real estate agency and say we're looking for land, because we got to see like places off the beaten path that we'd not know existed. So we looked at some places in Saskatchewan, like in the big muddy, like beautiful, like coulees in East End, like you would not think it's like what our typical view of Saskatchewan is. So that was a lot of fun, and it did help a little bit. We, just got to see a little bit more of different areas and benefits and, drawbacks of different areas, because we really didn't know, right? Not being from here, you can talk to people and try to get as much information as you can, but still, until you live it, I think that's like everything, right? You don't know until you're actually doing it.
Right. Absolutely. So talk to us now about, I guess, the differences. Like you said, you had calved earlier in the year in BC, but what are some of the main differences that you've noticed with the operation side of things?
Yeah. So that was one of the benefits we felt in moving, was we would have a little bit more management control. So it was at a time where I was really involved with the Canadian Cattle Association and learning all these different, management practices and really wanting to try to implement things at home, but realizing it was really hard at our place in BC. And not saying all of BC is like that, just, some of in our context, there are constraints. I don't think we could have done them. So one of them would be like pulling bulls, right? So we can manage our calving date here because we have access to them all the time. In BC, our range was 100,000 acres of mountains and trees. And so yes, we would go out there multiple times a week to move cattle, but to actually say we could go and find all our bulls, it just wouldn't be possible. So things like that are big benefits. We have more management control and can make those decisions here for sure. Negatives would be, for us in particular, unfortunately, the year we moved to Morse, it pretty much stopped raining. It hasn't rained much since. So that's honestly been such a struggle. The drought, yeah, it's nothing like we ever knew or could fathom. So where we were in BC, it was considered semi-desert, so it was dry. But we had a river running right through our ranch. So to us, water was never an issue. Cattle always had water. We had water, right? So we could irrigate off that river to grow crops for winter feed. So yes, it was dry, but we had means to deal with that. Whereas here, we're just dependent on rain. And when we don't get that, it has a huge impact.
Right. And I was counting back the years, and 2017, that was really we had been in drought already for us here in Southern Alberta, but 2017, it's really when it stopped raining. Talk to us about the management practices, because, there's obviously people listening who live in very rainy climates or, at least have the irrigation to make it rain if they have to. So what are some of the management practices that you guys have had to adopt in order to mitigate or work with the drought?
Yeah, so that's something we've put a huge focus on the last few years. And so I would say the silver lining of the drought, and I'm not saying this to make light of it, it's been really hard for us. It's been such a struggle. We've sold over 100 cows just to make it through. So I say that, I say the silver lining, not saying it lightly, right? But I would think in a way, it has been a benefit, because if we would have moved and it kept raining, we could have just kept doing what we were doing. And in a way, we almost just picked up our BC ranch, put it here, and tried to carry on as we did in BC, and didn't really adapt initially to maybe our different climate and circumstances. And so the drought really, though, highlighted maybe some of those management practices we needed to change or, adopt. And so grazing management has been huge for us. It's been a huge learning curve. Obviously, we had to manage our grass in BC on range. It was just different. Like I said, it was extensive. They had 100,000 acres, and, we'd get small groups that we'd find when we were moving cows and, leave them here and then come back in a few days and push them a little farther. But here we have acres, and they're, more confined, if that makes sense. I don't really like using that word, but, they're in fields. They don't have all that extensive land to roam around. So, and our place here is mostly native rangeland, which we are super proud to manage. That is such neat land, right? To know that it's the same plant species that when the bison roamed it, and, the diversity and how many other species it's home to, and a lot of species at risk. That's something that we're really proud of and have really done a lot of learning on, but it's also comes with its own unique management requirements. So we try to delay turnout, to delay our grazing later into the year for our native grassland, and give it a lot of rest. So we try to pick a native field a year that actually never gets touched, just to give that a really great amount of rest and let those plant roots, make sure they're healthy and can establish and spread seed and things like that. So that's on our native side. And we only have 5 quarters of tame grass. And so that's where we've really focused our grazing management on. And so we just completed a pipeline project this summer. So we shallow buried 3 miles of pipeline. And then in one of the fields, it was a 2-quarter field that we used to just continually graze it. Last year, we cut it up into 10 paddocks. And this year, it'll be actually 25 smaller paddocks with about 2 or 3 day moves, just kind of depending. And so we're super excited to really, increase our animal impact on that tame grassland. So last year, even just with small changes, we saw such a difference in the grass. And because we let it rest so long, like we would go to one paddock and they wouldn't see it, like wouldn't return, our residue or like our regrowth is amazing. And that's something that we didn't see before in our old management system. So we're really excited for, the future of what we can do and hopefully just, be able to produce more dollars per acre, and then also just like really getting our grass more productive, because that was a thing, like our tame grass wasn't productive. So you talk about rejuvenating it, reseeding it, but that costs money, diesel, equipment. And so if we could do it just with our improving our practices and our cattle, that's something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to talk about the cattle. We talk about the impacts of people moving from province to province, but these cows were likely born and raised, a lot of them in a mountain, and then you brought them to the prairies. So what was the impact on the cattle and that move for them?
Such a great question. And that was something we honestly put a lot of thought and consideration in when we were moving. And I will be totally honest, I think we were like really naive in our move. Like we thought it was hard in BC, there was mountains. So we were moving to Saskatchewan, like grass just grew. Like it would be, I'm not downplaying it. Like ranchers, farmers anywhere are tough. And, there's always adverse conditions. But we honestly thought we were making an easier move. And so we thought if our cows managed literally in the mountains in BC, pretty much fending for themselves, right? They had to find, there was water everywhere, but they had to find water, fending off predators, that kind of thing. We thought making the miles in the mountains, we honestly thought that it would be a pretty easy life in Saskatchewan for our cows. And so thinking about it, we're like, yeah, we probably wouldn't buy Saskatchewan cows and make them do the miles in BC, but we thought this way would be all right. But yeah, I guess we learned another hard lesson there with that everywhere has its downsides, or just everywhere is hard in your own area, right? Context is everything. And so while yes, they didn't have mountains to compete with, they had really hot summers with no shade, which they probably weren't used to. Water quality was another thing that literally blew our mind. Like we had that river that ran right through our range and right through our ranch that was literally fresh water from the mountains from runoff and snow melt. So when we moved here and talking about water quality and testing your water, like it sounds like it's embarrassing to say and it sounds super naive now because we know, but at the time, like we had no idea about any of that. So yes, we test our water now, but that was a big learning curve. And yeah, so then just for our cows to adapt to all that, I think you don't give animals enough credit for what they can do and adapt, and then add the drought on there too, right? So now we brought them to a whole different type of grass, nutritional profile of grass, and then it's dry too. So they've had a lot of challenges. Like I said, we've sold a lot of cows because of the drought, just to make it work grass wise and feed wise. Our open rates haven't been great throughout the drought, but we're, learning how to manage that better, and that all plays into our grazing management. So we've lost a lot of the BC cows, but there's still some, and I find that super cool. Like we've got one cow, she's 12. So born in BC, lived the life in the mountains, and then has made the move, been able to, keep in calf throughout the drought. So that's kind of special.
She's resilient, just like
absolutely
ranchers are, right? Very cool. Very cool. You can help support the stories of women in agriculture to be shared through the Rural Woman podcast on Patreon. What is Patreon? It's a membership-based platform that helps fund and support creators like me to create and produce content like this that you all love. New to the Rural Woman podcast Patreon is ad-free listening and patron-only bonus content and exclusive episodes. Learn more and join the patron gang today at patreon.com/the Rural Woman podcast. So I want to talk to you about your work with the Canadian Cattle Young Leader and the Young Cattlemen's Council. So you do a lot of work outside of the ranch to really advocate for your industry. Talk to us about the different experiences you've had.
Yeah, so those are experiences that are, really near and dear to my heart. They really helped, I feel, shape my future in the beef industry. So growing up, Dad obviously was a rancher, worked so hard, had to work through a lot of things, right? Like he made it through BSC, high interest rates, all the things. Like I give him so much credit, but he wasn't really involved in any organization. So I never grew up understanding or be involved in kind of the policy side of things. And when I got involved in the Cattlemen's Young Leaders program, I was the second intake group. So the program was relatively young. And I was paired up with mentors. So they were also BC ranchers, Doug and Erika Fawson. And yeah, it was just such a great experience. So learning from them, but then also being involved in CCA meetings, being able to sit in on committee meetings, their AGM in Ottawa, semi-annual meetings. So yeah, it really kind of sparked my interest for policy. And for me, I really felt that I wanted to continue to be involved, to learn, but also to give back and, help the industry.
What is it? I think as farmers and ranchers, a lot of times we can definitely have opinions on what policy should be and really want to shape that direction of where it's going. What was it for you that really led you to that policy? Why did you want to impact the policy?
I think just like knowing that that was my passion, and that's where Kyle and I how we wanted to live our life, or, make a living. So just making sure that policy that's being put in place isn't too incumbent on the producer, cumbersome, I should say, on the producer, but also making sure that we're always looking ahead, because at the end of the day, we want to ensure consumer confidence and we want to have that relationship. So we can't just disregard things that are issues, but I also don't think we should just, be too pliable and say, okay, this is what you want, we'll give it to you. I think there needs to be a happy medium there. And sharing our story and education, to me, and advocacy is really important. If we can talk about all the great things we do on farm, different risk mitigation programs we do, or just simple conversations. So I'm the coordinator for the Verified Beef program in Saskatchewan. So I deliver that program, and Agribition was about a month ago, and I volunteer our booth to be a stop for the Egg in the Classroom school program. So we ask kids a question, and I always try to ask questions that are maybe controversial a little bit to get the conversation, because I feel if you just ask, people don't generally ask the question they want, or that maybe they've heard of. So I ask about antimicrobials, and as a rancher, do you think I should be able to give my cattle antibiotics if they're sick? And it's amazing to me how many kids and parents and teachers say no. And I do really feel, after a simple conversation of well, if you're sick, do you think your mom or dad should take you to the doctor? Doesn't that make you feel better if, you can get medicine that makes you feel better? But also knowing that as ranchers, we take our job really seriously. At the end of the day, we're producing food for people to eat. And most of the people I know take that job really seriously, and we want to do our best for our animals and our consumers. And so being able to tell them that, did you know on all the products we use, there's withdrawal times? So if I adhere to that, so if I use a product and the withdrawal time is 21 days or 28 days, whatever it is, I just don't process that animal for human consumption in that time frame. And then you can be rest assured that any beef you buy in the grocery store is antibiotics, residue free. So just having those simple conversations, I think, can be really powerful. So that's something that I really,
And I think coming from a non-agriculture background myself, I always play, the devil's advocate for the consumers, right? Because we are given the information that we are told. So if we are told that, this meat has no antibiotics in it, well, then of course we're thinking, are there some meats that do have antibiotics in it, right? And we're not, that simple conversation isn't had from a farmer or a rancher, or really anything that we're being marketed to. So of course there's confusion, but tell us more about the work that you do with Egg in the Classroom, because I think that piece is so important, because we know that at a young age, we learn about food and where food comes from for the most part. And kids have that influence over, what they eat at home too.
I think it's so important. That's something to me that I'm really passionate about. And I love how you said that, because I think sometimes in the egg industry in general, and specifically beef industry, but we don't have enough of that. We kind of like talk in our own echo chamber. So like we know what we're doing and we know all the responsible practices we're doing, but other people don't. And like you say, it's completely fair because you're getting inundated with all this other marketing that's meant to make you question it, right? To buy another product. They're not trying to help us out and tell our story. And I think for so long, in general, I would say people in agriculture aren't really the ones, don't feel comfortable standing up and talking and sharing their story. And I certainly didn't. It's taken me a lot, to feel comfortable doing it. And I still get nervous and, should I say that? Or, that kind of thing. Like, what are people going to think of that? But I just kind of like, no, this is our story. This is what we're doing. I feel passionate enough to, hopefully help consumers understand. And so, yeah, I try to be involved with Egg in the Classroom. We hosted a teacher tour a few years ago. And that's an angle of it that I never really considered before. But after that tour, seeing how important that is because of how much influence teachers can have on our students, right? So if they have a misperception or don't fully understand something and maybe they share that unintentionally, I know I remember things my teacher shared. So kids hang on to those things. So if we can help at that level too. So yeah, we toured them around and talked about what we do on our place. So that was, in my mind, really something that I never thought about the teacher part of it, but something I really, really enjoyed doing and was really happy to be able to provide some information there. And then we also hosted Food Farm. So that's another program through Egg in the Classroom. So I think it was over 100 kids, maybe even a little over 100. Grades 3 and 4 students would come out and we had a whole bunch of different stations. So I did, I think they needed 12 stations. So it was not something that just I could do or our family could do. So pulled in some help from Ministry of Agriculture and SODCAP, Species at Risk. So we had a bunch of different stations and talked about, how cattle interact with the environment too, different plant species. They went on a walk through the native grass and identified plants and talked about our cows and so just trying to bring kids to a working ranch as much as possible because unfortunately lots of them have lost that connection, right? They don't have an aunt and uncle or grandparents that are still on the farm. And in reality, in agriculture, as primary producers, we're the, less than 2% feeding the rest of the population. So as often as we can give a little bit of insight or share what we do, it's, something I'm passionate about and try to do.
Absolutely. And it's important work, right? And I think we talk about how important it is to share our stories and for consumers and people who don't have that direct connection to hear our stories and to hear what we're doing and how their food is produced. I think it's also important for other producers to hear other people sharing their stories, to feel that connection with one another, right? Because like you said, it's the less than 2% population that's doing this. So it can feel isolating and lonely. Talk to me about the different connections that you've been able to make in the agriculture industry from working in policy and really sharing your story online.
Yeah, that's been huge as well for me. I'll circle back probably to CYL, the Cattlemen's Young Leaders. That was a pretty big catalyst to meet people in the industry that were doing all this policy work and learning from them. And then, I think sometimes you just have to put yourself out there. I've met so many people when you're like, should I do this? I don't know, so nervous, but always something really good has come from it. So I also have worked with Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan, and they're an amazing group of people there that do so much for the Canadian egg industry on in all the commodities, just really directed to consumers. So I do some videos for them and just, have learned so much from them and have had some really great experiences through literally putting myself out there being like, hey, I want to make videos and share them. So I just, those connections are so great because that's what it boils down to. It's who you know, and it helps introduce you to this person who's doing this, and you can always learn something. So I love those connections and meeting people and learning.
Right. And I love what you said. There's always that doubt. Should I be doing this? Should I say yes to this? Or is there something more that I can be doing? And I think there's growth comes from that uncomfortable
Yeah.
zone, right? Like stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's not comfortable to be on video talking about what you do, or on a podcast sharing about what you do, or on a stage or anything. Recently, you and I were at the same conference and you were giving presentations at the Emerge conference up in Lloydminster. Tell me about being the face of a presentation and presenting in front of your peers. How did that go for you?
It honestly went so well. The ladies at that conference was amazing. I just want to say that. And I did 2 breakout sessions and everybody was amazing. I had so much fun, but I was so nervous. I feel that was like the first time I'd really shared my story to other producers. And sometimes not sometimes, it absolutely does make me more nervous because I don't want to ever say like, what I'm doing is better than what you're doing because I'm doing things differently. Like am always so like conscientious of not coming off that way because I never think that. And so I always try to like hammer home it's just context, like because this doesn't work for me or it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And also just, you're with your peers, I guess, which is wonderful if you're not the one standing up there sometimes. But it was so much fun. The ladies were so great. I had a really great time. And my presentation was it was different than anything I've ever done. I was like quite vulnerable in it and talked about like our ranch, obviously, and ranching and verified beef, but so like the actual kind of beef production side, but also just what it's like sometimes being a wife and a mother and a rancher and having a job. And so like I showed a very vulnerable picture of like our very messy house one day. Like I was preparing for the conference and like was just like looking around and was like, this is a disaster. But then to kind of have that camaraderie of like, we're not alone. Like sometimes your house will be a disaster when you're trying to do 30 other things or, you can't hold everything up all at once. So I shared that and I was super nervous. I like had deleted it out of my presentation, put it back in, deleted it. But in the end, I'm super glad I shared it because there was a lot of comments like, that's life. And, thanks for sharing that. So I felt that conference was a really special group of ladies and it was really fun. So I'm glad I did it, even though I was so nervous too. So
Right. And once you've done it the first time, now you can do it again and show everyone else your messy house and be like, look, not everything is all cute cows and frolicking in a field, right? Like it is. Sometimes it's messy. And I feel like in the middle of that mess is usually when people are going to make those connections. So thank you for being vulnerable with us and those women there. It was an amazing conference and I had a lot of fun. Talking about being recognized by your peers, you and Cyle were nominated as Saskatchewan's Outstanding Young Farmer of the Year of 2024. That's got to feel pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Yeah, it's pretty special.
So tell us about, I guess, that program and how you were told and everything that kind of came with that.
Yeah, so it was a very humbling experience. I feel, I feel we all have that. We're like, I don't know, we're not doing anything that great, or, we haven't made great impacts yet. Like we talk about our grazing management, and I feel we're just getting started down the road too. So, but anyhow, we were very humbled and honored to be nominated. And so a good friend nominated us. So he kind of told me, like, sent me a message, do we meet the criteria and would we accept? And we did. It was a lot of work and we were very nervous and, I don't know if we should, you just don't, I feel that's a common theme and I'm trying to work on that, but like, are we outstanding or, can we accept this? So we, worked on that and it was quite a process. So there was another couple that were nominated for Saskatchewan and we've actually become very good friends with them. We only live 40 minutes away and before we didn't know them. We've got kids the same age and we've actually done a lot of things together. So we're so grateful for that experience and to have met them. But during I don't know if you call it a competition, but we had to present and there's judging and it is like, oh my goodness, it's a little bit nerve wracking, but and again though, out of that, just like you said, out of that uncomfortable space is always so much growth. And I always find something positive comes from it. So that was, amazing. And then because we won for Saskatchewan, we got to compete at the national level, which was at the end of November in Lethbridge. So then there were other young farmers from all across Canada. So they have Canada broken up into different regions. So BC, I think in the Yukon, Alberta, Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. So we got to meet people from all over Canada in vastly different aspects of agriculture, and we had such a fun group and had such a great week together, even though, again, very nerve-wracking too, like judging and presenting in front of hundreds of people. But yeah, so much positive came out of it.
Very cool. And I just think it's a really neat program to really highlight the incredible things that young people in agriculture are doing. And you got to come to my hometown for a week. So
Oh, was it? I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Yep. Born and raised. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
That's why we all lean to the east in Lethbridge. If you ever see me leaning to the east, that's why we walk that way. What is next for you, Erika, and the ranch?
Oh, such a great question. Yeah, I feel like right now there's just a lot going on where I took the Ranching for Profit school last year in February. So there was a ton of learning from that, more focused on like the business, because we're running a business. And I think sometimes we forget about that in the day-to-day, all the work we need to get done, or just would rather be outside and look at numbers and things like that. So yeah, Kyle and I have a lot of goals around actually working. They call it in Ranching for Profit, working on the business, not just working in the business and doing the fun things that not always fun, but most of the time, right? It's enjoyable to be outside working with our animals. So yeah, we have goals around that. We try to schedule more actual business meetings and looking at numbers more. So we did something last year that I think worked in our favor. And again, you never know how it's going to shake down with markets, because we don't, at the end of the day, we don't have all the control. But if we try to make decisions, based on the best information we have. So we ended up selling, we have a commercial cow-calf operation, and then we also grass yearlings. And so we decided actually to not keep as many replacement heifers because the grass yearling market was really strong. So things that we hadn't really considered before, and just actually penciling things out a little bit better. So that's really big for us right now. And then just really leaning into this grazing management. So we call it AMP grazing, so adaptive multi-paddock grazing with our pipeline system. So just getting water to all the different parts of our ranch is another big goal. So like I said, we did 3 miles of the shallow buried pipeline. And when we see that, we've been playing on Google Maps Google Earth. So you can see the pastures and how big they are. And so we've drawn it out, like if you could put a pipeline kind of around our whole ranch. The other cool thing about our places is actually all in a block. So it helps. It's one of our unfair advantages, we call it, when we try to think about benefits of our place or how we can use that to our advantage, because we can graze, like we have them all there. So we can really manage their grazing. And if we try and really improve our tame grass production, if we can maybe not turn out on our native grass till like August, September, that would also help us, because they can graze that longer into the winter. And then we wouldn't have to start feeding until like February is kind of our goal. And that would really decrease our costs, like our winter feed costs, which would really help us. So playing with things like that, and just, we're really excited about this grazing management. And we're trying to take a lot of baseline metrics so we can actually, see if it is improving or is going to improve, like in theory it should. So we're excited about that.
Very cool. Well, you mentioned taking this course. What other resources have you found most helpful when it comes to learning about grazing management?
That course was really helpful. I would like to take the holistic management course as well. But also just talking to people. I find sometimes those are the best resources, like people that have been doing it for a lot longer than us, their trial and errors, and then we don't have to repeat the mistake, and learn that hard way. So yeah, like I said, I feel like going to conferences, meeting people, sometimes you're busy, you can always make an excuse not to go. But I've literally found anytime I've went somewhere, I've met somebody, I've learned something. So to me, that's huge. We were also, so Kyle and I, this was a few years ago, but we were asked to be mentors in the Beef Cattle Research Council mentorship program. So where they pair researchers up with producers. because we obviously like need our researchers to help, always ensure our industry is innovative. But in lots of cases, they don't have like on-farm practical experience. So that's what this program provides. And it was super fun. We got paired up with his name's Tony, and he has his postdoc, and he's so smart, and he does research in yonis and all sorts of things. And yeah, again, we were like, I don't think this is good. Like, do you have the right people? Like, he's so smart. But it's been so fun. We've learned so much from him. And then on that, they like had a tour for us. And again, we had to drive to Calgary. It was in fall. It wasn't really great timing for us. But like, no, we're going to go. And we ended up touring a ranch where, again, Kyle and I could have been like, we don't need to tour a ranch. But we met Stephen Hughes from Chinook Ranches, who does a lot of grazing, understands grazing and grazing native grass. And like, he's like one of Kyle's mentors now. So just, I guess, putting yourself out there, meeting people and really talking to people. And I feel, helping that has helped us so much, is having those people who have done it and have experience. And we really do lean on them and ask them questions.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of work that you do outside of the ranch, in terms of policy and advocating, what do you hope is next for you in that? Do you have any big plans? I think this is where we ask you if you're going to run for government, but we won't do that. No.
No, I guess I don't have big plans, to be honest. It's more small plans, because sometimes I feel I'm really bad at saying yes to everything, which I've just kind of advocated for, but I've always found benefit in it. But then I do like not a great job of things, and I don't like that either. So actually my goal for January is to start doing my videos again for Farm and Food Care. So I used to do a monthly video of just something that's important that we're doing on the ranch, and I've been pretty slack lately, but that's something to me that's really important, because like I said, they do a lot of great advocacy work, and it's shared on their YouTube channel. And so I'd like to get back to doing that. So it's not a huge goal, I guess, small steps. Yes, that would be a goal.
Those small steps make big impact though. Yeah, for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah. And it's always good to remember that too, right? Like the small things add up to big things. We don't have to say yes to absolutely everything that's thrown at us. And like you said, doing a good job at those small things makes a bigger impact.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Erika, my last question for you is, what is the most rewarding part about being a rural woman for you?
I think the most rewarding part is making a life living on the land and with animals, and being able to share that story with our children, like being able to pass that knowledge and hopefully that passion down. And also just share it with consumers and the people who don't get that opportunity or experience. Because like I said before, we're the minority, right? We're the 1.5% that is producing food for people to consume and to nourish their bodies. So I think that's such an important job. And I just love sharing that story about how much knowledge and passion goes into it.
I love it. So good. Erika, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. For the folks listening who would like to connect with you after the show, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so I have Facebook, Erika Stewart, and Instagram, Pine Ranch Limited, and we also have a website where we share information about beef production and our videos from Farm and Food Care. So that's www.pineranch.ca.
Perfect. And I will link all of those in the show notes so people can find you and connect with you.
Well, thank you so much, Caitlin, for the chat today. It was really fun.
It was so great. Thanks, Erika. Thanks for listening to the Rural Woman Podcast. The Rural Woman Podcast is more than just a podcast. We are a community. A huge thank you to the Rural Woman Podcast team, audio editor Max Hofer. A special thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Sarah Riedner from Happiness by the Acre. To learn how you can become a Patreon executive producer or other ways to financially support the show, head on over to wildrosefarmer.com to learn more. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to the podcast to get the latest episodes directly on your playlist. And if you are loving the show, please be sure to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other platform that accepts ratings and reviews. You can connect with us on social media at The Rural Woman Podcast and with me at Wild Rose Farmer. One of the best ways you can support the show is by sharing it. Send this episode to a friend or share on your social media. Let's strengthen and amplify the voices of women in agriculture together. Until next time, my friend, keep sharing your story. Did you know that you can get this same great episode of the Rural Woman podcast ad-free? I get it. Listening to ads during a podcast isn't always my favorite either. But in order to keep the lights and coffee pot on here at the Rural Woman Podcast Studios, they are necessary. I am so grateful to each and every one of my sponsors, but if you yourself would like to skip the ads while supporting the show, consider joining me over on Patreon. Patrons of the Rural Woman Podcast get ad-free episodes starting at Tier 5 on their podcast player of choice each week, plus some other great benefits. Find out more by heading to the link in today's show notes to learn how you can become a patron through Patreon.